Hello, hello, hello. Let's go ahead and get the microphone check out of the way here before we get rolling with today's stream. Almost said video, but this is a stream. And let me know if you can hear me across the various chats. We have Twitch, YouTube, and X.com running right now. And yeah, we're going to get rolling and take a look at Bitcoin, of course, today, and maybe traditional markets and a few altcoins if there is time. All right, let's get the music under control here. Thank you for that. I appreciate you letting me know that you can hear me okay. All right, so let's jump into this. We do have fairly small crew today, but that's okay. This is being recorded on YouTube and X. I do suggest before we get started, if you are watching this on X, the stream quality on X is fairly low, even when pushing a high bit rate to it. I do suggest for a better watching experience that you head over to the YouTube stream. It's even better than the Twitch stream as well. You can head on over to my X profile there, and you can see that I linked the most recent YouTube stream as well. And that is the current live stream. So let's go ahead and jump into our main screen here. We're actually going to start out with some lower term time frames. And we're looking at Bitcoin today, of course, as always. And welcome to Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is Monday, May 13th, 2024. And we have me dropping stuff everywhere. Hold on just a moment. All right. So we had a pretty decent move after CME open on Sunday. And that is something that we're going to take a look at here. We'll head on over to our crypto chart here, or our crypto category rather, and we'll take a look at CME. So in this case, we had a nice gap up on CME in the lower term timeframes. Let's go ahead to the 15-minute. Let's see. We were trading around, we were trading just over 61.4 here at 61.440 is where CME opened. You see that it came back down for the gap fill, had a nice double bottom on the 15-minute, and then came right up to this resistance zone. Now, I did want to point out CME today because this resistance zone is an area of interest on some medium-term timeframes below the daily. We can see how once losing this zone, Bitcoin's typically running the bottom side of the range here. And in Friday's candle, you did see that Bitcoin did break down from this particular wick low and even try for this part of a fill on this wick low area over here and the overall lows of the range again. But Bitcoin is still in an area of interest for a potential higher low. And when looking at our regular spot price chart here, you can see that, we did put in a swing low back on Thursday. Of course, Friday came right back down and nearly bearishly engulfed the Thursday candle. Did not complete that engulfing candle though. And we saw things go sideways over the weekend on the lower first standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands here. And now price is trying to pop back up. The criteria is still the same. For Bitcoin to set a closing low, you're going to see it call this a closing low again. Most indicators will populate another drive of bullish divergence. I would like to note that Bitcoin is above the moving average of RSI on the daily as well here. But until we see price actually closing in the original area that I had mentioned last week, and that is above the open here at 63,161, it is not, in my opinion, a valid, actionable closing low. Although it is starting to build divergence, and it is building divergence off of this particular low over here. Let me get the arrow here. We can see this low right here, where the close opens coming in around that 61,300 or so, right around the monthly. And that monthly, I believe, is it from March? Is that the March one? Let's go ahead and take a look. So we'll throw on horizontal support and resistance. That's the October 2021. March is down here at 58.8, and that is a monthly and quarterly. Now this is also where the lower second standard deviation on the daily is. Now, when looking for a trend shift, we can, gauge it in a couple different ways here. So if Bitcoin does put in a higher low here, it just needs to go and take out this last lower high. And this is coming in at 65,523 on the wick. That is currently right around the upper second standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands as well. So we do have some confluence between horizontal resistance and the volatility level of the Bollinger Bands there by the upper second. Now, it would be encouraging for Bitcoin to go and take out the close open here, and of course set that low at around that 63,161. I really want to see around a 63,400 to 500 close to get above the failed wick highs here from Thursday and Friday of last week. That would be encouraging to see Bitcoin go ahead and head up to that upper first standard deviation for a test around $64,000. That is right around the close open lower high up here. You can see that price did spike that in today's candle almost to the dollar at around that 63,456. So you really do want to see it trading and closing above 63.5 to really go test 64 and then subsequently up to the April of 2021 monthly swing high at 65 to give it a shot at that lower high at 65,523. Above there, I would call it a trend shift and a trend break, but it would not be fully confirmed. You still need to see one more high or low at minimum to then start targeting this high up here. And we don't even need to see a higher low before it targets this high, but in general, we want to see for a trend shift, we want to see the higher low. We want to see a trend break or a downtrend break in this case, and then another higher low, wherever that comes in, really doesn't matter. But I would be targeting above 65,500 or so, around this 67,2 to 3. Above there, we're marking up to around that $69,000 to $70,000 region. And then, of course, as you've heard before, above there, we're looking for the high side structures over here between around 70 to 73 on the wick here. And then above there, the all-time high coming in at around 73,835. If we do see price breakout above there, looking around 75 to 78, 78 to 80, and then mid to low 80s to begin. And then we come back to it as price makes progress, should it head up that way. Now, bulls need to watch out, because if Bitcoin does drop this last swing low here at around 60,150, it's almost certainly going to go for this March quarterly and monthly down here from 2021 at $58,800 to $59,000. And then, of course, below there, you can see the lower third standard deviations right around the current lows here. That is coming in at the close there at 58,256 or 265 there, and the actual low there at 56,500. Any closes below there, I would be looking for further downside. $55,000 fair game, anywhere below $55,000, and we start looking down to the next big support area. This was prior resistance that was met earlier this year, back in February. And this is historical support and resistance coming in from September of 2021. That was a weekly swing high at $53,000 down to the weekly closes here from August and December coming in at 51.8 and 50,800 respectively. I'd give it a zone. Any breakdowns below 55,000, and I would be looking really essentially 50K to 53K here at that September 2021 weekly swing high. So that is fairly clear. Now, when heading down to something like a 4-hour, we can see that Bitcoin is rejecting in a pretty important zone here. So we do have some order block candles here. We've got one from the way up prior to the failed test there that put in the high at around 65.5. This was a failed test of the, or a failed attempted reclaim at this overhead resistance at $65,000. So we do have a nice order block candle prior to the more aggressive expansion up and then test into that zone. And we actually have another order block candle that came in around the prior highs up here where price is currently trading. So this is a pretty easy zone to see that we're getting some heavy resistance. And once broken, you can see that things are likely to head up and test a little bit further up, at least swing the local highs here. And this zone is roughly coming in at around the open there at 63,000 to the close over here at around 62,730. So Bitcoin is currently in the progress of kind of losing this area. So it's kind of, in my opinion, it's kind of looking encouraging for bulls. But in the longer term timeframes, as we get into the more macro view of price, it is pressure down. So there is not too much headway being made right now. It's a nice move up off of this monthly zone between 61,350 from that October of 2021 monthly close down to that March area from 2021 at 58.8. But realistically, it hasn't done a whole lot. A lot of this is coming in the context of 12-hour compression. So I did want to call this out. I mentioned on Friday, and I believe even on Thursday, when looking at the 12-hour, things were kind of set up in a range between the upper seconds. The Bollinger Bands were equally spread out, kind of letting us know that, tests down to somewhere around the lows by the lower second standard deviation or up to the upper second standard deviation, likely to be first pass rejections of price continuation. And in this case, we did see that. In fact, Bitcoin coming up and running the upper first standard deviation and then running the lower first standard deviation on the 12-hour here is kind of all you need to really look at as it compresses. And you can see that the compression phase has really started to deepen here on the 12-hour. So the next big move is going to be dictated by the 12-hour here. And you can see the lower second standard deviation is right around this low at 60,150. Now, granted, it is slightly below there, giving price a little bit of room to swing below it. But if you do see that low breached on a closing basis on a 12-hour or even a 4 or 6-hour, I would say, that also begins to break down from the lower second standard deviation around $60,000, we're going to see price head down to this March 2021 area at $58,800, $59,000 or so. Now that would, any kind of a break below there and a close on the 12-hour below the lower second, we would be looking at expansion. So it would be compression to expansion. And then if Bitcoin began to break down from this March area around that $58,800 to $59,000, we're looking at price running this low over here. At minimum, I'd be looking on a close at around that 12-hour 57,835 to the actual wick lows at 56,500. And that's where you can entertain a possible sweep of those lows at around 55 to 55.5 or so. And we'll take a look at some other confluences around that area. But realistically, start losing that area, likely going to see expansion kick off on other time frames and more than likely looking lower. You can also see to the upside, the upper second standard deviation on the Bollinger Bands here is right here coming in line with that April of 2021 monthly swing high at $65,000. And this is going to be key to watch because if Bitcoin starts to reclaim this area, it still needs to close above the upper second and break this high at 65.5. So that is the criteria to be met to start looking further up to the next high zone. You can see the around $66,000. That's also where the 12-hour close open is on this high up here that put in the swing high around that 67.2 to 3. So I do want you to understand kind of how price interacts with some of these areas, and note that there is some significant lows in this area as well that came in on volume, and that is around that $65.5 to $66,000. So we do have quite a bit of overhead resistance here in key areas or key historical zones. So that is going to be worth watching. Now we can take a look at Stochastic momentum, and this is a regular Stochastic, not a Stochastic RSI. And for those of that have asked that maybe have not been around for a little while, the Stochastic that I am showing on the chart here is a paid indicator. It's from app.crowntrading.net. You don't need to get a paid indicator. There are free ones that have Stochastic pivots. In fact, there is the reverse Stochastic panel, and this is a free one that is searchable in the indicators tab up here. Now we can see that 60,600 is the momentum pivot for the 12-hour. And this is a regular Stochastic, so this is measuring close over close price momentum. It is not a Stochastic RSI, which measures rather the velocity of RSI. So, you know, a counterpoint to look at here is that Bitcoin is in the progress, you know, in terms of a counterpoint in terms of evaluating your potential bias here for my potential bias, quite honestly, on a rejection like what we're seeing right now, which is that price likely heads back down at minimum for a retest around $61.5 to $62,000. We'll see. You know, it is trading at 62,600 right now, but if it does start to breach below that lower first, be aware of a swing of the current low side structure around the closes here in the mid $60,000 area. And if it starts to breach below, you know, look for a swing, possibly a breach of that $60,000 area. But one of the things that you do want to note here is that we do have some more significant in trend, meaning that we are in a downtrend. So we're getting lower lows on price action, but we are seeing the daily, there is unconfirmed bullish divergence, and this is coming from within range. So the easiest part of those bull divs has already played out. The secondary targets are the highs around 65 to 65.5. And the only way that I'm going to be looking for any kind of move towards even $63,500, $64,000 again is if we start to see Bitcoin reclaiming 63,200 rather. So on the 12-hour here, we do have multiple drives of bullish divergence. We do have a momentum shift. So I don't usually like to fade the 12-hour. The 12-hour is very good for reading what might be coming next on the daily. And it is a compression right now, so we're likely to see price knock around. And I am more on the bearish side. Why? Because of trend. And you know, we do have higher lows in place as it relates to this lower low structure over here at 57,835. And we are getting the bullish divergence from this low over here on the daily and 12-hour and lower term timeframes as well. But, you know, it doesn't mean much if Bitcoin does not get above, at minimum, 63,200 on a significant time frame closure, and I would say in this case like a 12-hour, which a 12-hour above there today would also be the daily. So keep that in mind. And on a compression, you can see Bitcoin run the lower second and or upper seconds and reject. So that is actually pretty normal when you see a compression phase like this. It is only when we start seeing it breach on a close below the lower second or above the upper second that we start evaluating the structure. So in this case, any closes below the lower second would also be a close below the current low. And that would point towards further expansion down to the downside, further into this support zone. And potentially, if the support zone breaks down, that's where we're looking at the lows and possibly lower. To the upside, that would be expansion, into the high that needs to be broken around 65.5. So, it's pretty clear in terms of its setup right now. And when looking at something like a 4-hour, this looks like it needs to come back down and at least try to put it in a higher low, to be quite honest. If I was a betting man, I would take this 61 to 61.3 as a possible zone of interest, but only if Bitcoin starts to break down on a close below the 4-hour upper first. And this is coming in at around $62,000. So, if Bitcoin does breach, especially on a closing basis below $62,000, if it hasn't already tested down to the basis band and this October monthly at 61,350 to 61K or so, then I would be looking for that if it hadn't already happened, and then come back to it. That's how we play this. It's all conditional. I do want to note that 62,400 is the momentum pivot on the 4-hour. So if Bitcoin continues to hang out sideways here for this next 4-hour close, which is coming around, around 2 hours and 30 minutes from now, then we're looking at, Stoke catching up to price going possibly sideways and or down. And then you start to see that momentum shift on the 4-hour. Now, I do want to see if there is a counterpoint on the 6-hour here. Where's the 6-hour positioned at? $61,000. So there you go. We have the momentum pivot for the 6-hour at 61K. We have a potential, if Bitcoin does head down and breach below $62,000, that would be the 4-hour upper first. And then I'd be looking for a test around $61,000, which is the 6-hour pivot. And possibly even around this basis band, maybe a swing of it there by 61,350 on the 4-hour here. I do want to take a look at a few other things here. Let's go ahead and throw on some moving averages just to see if there is any kind of a bias check here. Yeah, so this is a retest of the 200s. So we do see the 200 EMA and SMA. SMA hasn't even been ran yet. And then, of course, we have Bitcoin trading around Bobby's favorite there, the 369 EMA, the actual meme EMA that works. So in this case, a move back down to the 9, right around $62,000 would be a test around that upper first on the Bollinger Bands for the 4-hour as well. If we do see Bitcoin swing above the 200s here, we're likely going to see it testing around that $64,000 to $65,000 area up here. And I would be looking for, higher low structure to develop from there. That is, from the actual Bollinger Band setup that we were looking at, and from the EMA setup and MA setup, there are regular moving averages on here as well. It is still very bearish bias. So we don't see any kind of a trend shift in EMAs. We want to see a full stack start to develop to the upside here. So more than likely, if Bitcoin does try to push up to these areas, it's going to be first pass rejections, just like we're seeing now. But if we do see any continuation further up, going to see it probably finding some heavy resistance around these highs coming into that April monthly swing high at 65. So it would be encouraging, though, if Bitcoin can at least test up there again and has a chance to try to switch things around. When looking at the 12-hour, Yeah, so the 12-hour Bitcoin did swing down below the 200s. We actually have the 200 EMA flipped under the 200 SMA here. So this is telling me that this is probably going to take a little while to work itself out if it is going to choose the upside route. And we do currently have a potential I know Crown over there at Eric Crown Crypto now uh, likes these 9/21 crosses to the upside. And the 9 is very close to crossing above the 21 here. And that is right at around $62,000. So that means that Bitcoin would have to close above that $62,000 to get that cross. And you typically see tests into it. You can see how that kind of interacts here. We can this is not a preferred setup of my own, but if you are familiar with Crown and any of his work over there, he does a very good job and has a lot of different setups and plans and stuff like that that he's gone through over the years. This was one of the more interesting ones. And, you know, it's fairly common in traditional markets as well. Although sometimes you'll see that they use faster EMAs like the 8 or the 5 for this. In this case, you know, you get the 9 underneath the 21 downtrend, tries to pop back up, fails, crosses back down, downtrend into the 200s here, swings below, get a nice little cross back up, crosses right back down into the 200s again here. And because we have the EMA under the SMA, this is still likely to hold price in this zone until we see a significant move above resistance. And of course, that's going to have to be above this lower high here at 65.5. So that is the read on EMAs there. Daily looking very bearish still. And I believe if we turn on the full stack EMAs, there's some longer EMAs above price right now as well. And yep, there is. We have we have the 55 Bitcoin trading around the 21 right now. Swung below the 100 EMA, which is that 200 on the 12-hour. We have the 50 SMA up here right around this high at 65.5. So again, we're getting a lot of, to be quite honest, we're getting a lot of bearish continuation signals at the moment, but this is where you would want to see price starting to turn around, right around a support that it just swung and failed to break down from. And then you also should be noting that we have declining volatility this entire drawdown. So if we go ahead and get rid of the bands here and we get rid of support and resistance, I do want to call your attention to this because in the context of a bull market, which this is still a bull market, I know many are losing faith in this being a bull market, but it's still a bull market. And what you can see is we had very high volume coming into the $68,000, $69,000 prior cycle all-time high. Of course, that's expected. We should be seeing high volume coming into those areas around prior cycle highs. We saw the swing above, and then we've had declining volume ever since. And of course, declining volume after the halving is nothing out of the ordinary either. But this does tell me that if this is going to play out a valid reaccumulation to upside move, we could be staring a potential downtrend, daily downtrend reversal right in the face right here, right now. Of course, you can throw on trend lines and you can see that it's hitting a trend line right now, but trend lines are kind of what you make them. And in this case, what I would be looking at is more important, and that is the potential for this to confirm this higher low structure here. And again, you know, I would say you're going to see it confirmed above 63,161. I want to see at minimum 63.2 on something like a 4-hour close to go and test up further. But daily closes, you know, I am going to have to be more biased towards around 63,500. Getting above this rejected area rejective area right here is going to be pretty key. We do have an order block just above here as well on the daily at around that 63 to 63,850 area on a close open or an open and close. The open coming in at 63,100, the close coming in there at 63,800 with the wick high at that 64,200, I believe. Yeah, it's slightly above there. Yeah, 64,200 exactly. Wick low on that particular order block candle is going to be 61.8. So this is getting tight in the range here. So but the nice thing is for bulls is they no longer have to go and beat out this high up here at 67 2 to 3. They just need to get above 65.5 or 65.550 if you like to be more aggressive with your criteria. And we would have a higher low in place, and then of course a trend break, and then we'd be looking, further up to that 67 200 to 300 top of the range, possibly resolution shortly thereafter to the upside. So we are seeing what we want to see in terms of the potential reversal setup, but things remain very bearish in terms of their lower term time frame trends and the potential to to possibly test lower if and only if we start seeing the current low side breakdown, $60,000, 60,150 if you like, and then of course losing this low at around that 56,500 area. And I do want to note that we now have the daily 200s in very key areas that I've spoken about many times. Let's go ahead and pull back up the monthly and weekly support and resistance. And you can see that the daily 200s are coming in line with the $53,000 and right in the middle of this weekly closing support zone there for the 200 SMA at around 51,200 or so. So again, if Bitcoin did break down from this current lower low structure at 56.5, we're looking somewhere around those 200s. And that would be in the 53 to, I would even entertain a swing below the 200s to around $50,000. So that is the current outlook for some of the lower term timeframes and the daily. So we should go and check on some of the higher term timeframes as well, as we did just get our weekly closure in. And we do have some significant timeframes below the weekly that closed as well. So let's go ahead and adjust the chart here so that we can start talking about that. On the 2-day, which is going to be closing today, we saw the initial expansion to the downside here on the 2-day chart. So we saw the nice compression right around the highs, took out the low side lower first, and tapped on the lower second, began to close below, initiating more aggressive expansion, bounced out, rejected the basis band, came back down, ran the lower second, lower third zone again, and the downside supports here, and then popped back up to the basis band, and then now running the lower first into this support zone. So on the 2-day, you can see that the last lower high to take out, of course, is that same area at 65.5. We have the daily basis band to get over here, and that's at around 64,300, of course, to the primary overhead resistance at $65,000. So kind of a zone between, I would even give it room 64 to 65.5 is going to be the main area of resistance if Bitcoin does choose to test up further. You can see the lower second standard deviation is right here at that March of 2021 monthly, and of course that is a quarterly as well, coming in around that 58,800 area. To be fair, 58,500 is where the lower second is, so it does provide for a possible swing of this area if it does hold up or price heads down there, swings the lows, and then pops back into this support zone. Then we could be looking at a longer term time frame, higher low trying to be set, or at minimum an area of interest below there. We're entertaining moves down to the mid $50,000 area, 55 to 55.5, possible swing of this low over here at that 56,500 area. Anywhere below there, we're looking at expansion down into the next support zone, 53 to around $50,000. Now, to the upside, you can see the 2-day upper first standard deviation is coming in line with this high at 67 2 to 3. So above there, it does give price the ability to move from the volatility perspective and, of course, trend perspective to test up to $69,000 to $70,000, and then that's where the upper second standard deviation is currently coming in. Above there, we're looking at the highs possibly higher from the 2-day chart up to the upper third, which is right around the all-time high there at 73,835. Any closes above the upper second on the 2-day still need to close above that all-time high to get expansion. So that's where we can start entertaining, an expansive move to the upside. Some of those deeper targets, 75, 78, 78 to 80, mid to low 80s to start. And then we come back to it and evaluate for more updated targets if price can get above there anytime soon. Now, the 3-day, we can see the lower second standard deviation is coming right in line again with that March monthly and quarterly at 58.8. Lower third coming in around 55.5, 55.6. That would be an area of interest if we are looking at the lower term timeframes for a possible swing of the lows. We can see that the basis band is just above this overhead resistance here, coming in around that 65.5 lower high here. Now, from the 3-day chart, if we did start to see any closures above $64,000, that would be a closing low set. Still need to see 65.5 taken out for continuation to go test the real lower high on a closing basis here at around that 67 2 to 300. Of course, any kind of a reclaim of the closing structure at $66,000 on the 3-day would be encouraging for the bulls to at least start to look up to that 67 2 to 3, and then we can come back to it later, possibly looking up to the upper first here on the 3-day where that overhead resistance is from the prior cycle at $69,000 to $70,000. Above there, the highs again from the 3-day chart, we're seeing that volatility on the upper second standard deviation is coming in right around the highs on a wick basis, and that is at $72,000. And of course, anywhere above there, I'd be looking for the highs and higher. We can see the upper third is right there at 75, 75 and a half or so. Any closures below the lower second that begin to lose this wick low over here at 56,500, you can see we'd be looking for expansion down into $53,000 to $50,000 or so. Pretty straightforward setups going on right now. Now we still have a 1 day and 7 hours to go on this, and of course my favorite chart to be looking at now is the 4-day. Because as we start to go into the longer term timeframes, you can see that this is a beautiful expansion up to a more macro compression. And in the context of a bull market, when you see a compression like this, price can knock in and around the upper second up here to the lower second while still in the compressive phase. And of course, knock in between the lower first and upper first while it's compressing. And then we come back to it for expansion direction later. In this case, we can see that the lower second standard deviation is right here at around 59,200. So price in and around this March low from 2021 isn't necessarily a bad thing, even if it wicks through and runs the low by the lower third standard deviation. The caveat there is if Bitcoin begins to close below the lower second, and then, of course, take out this prior lower low at 56,500, it would initiate expansion to the downside. And, of course, we'd be looking to the next area of support, $53,000 to $50,000. Now, I would venture to say if price heads back down here because of the more macro compression that's happening right now on the 4-day, I'd venture to say that if it even tries to swing this wick low, you're going to see aggressive buyers come into the market. That does not mean that they are going to be able to reverse anything. But I would be very careful if you're playing any kind of a break down short position. Not financial advice, of course, but I'd be very, very careful. You're probably going to get a lot of people and a lot of bigger players in the market that would be willing participants on the bid side. So that is to say, also, if Bitcoin can close back above the volatility level of the lower first on the 4-day, now it's 2 days and 7 hours to go for this one. So we will be seeing the 2-day closure at the end of today. And then in the next 2-day candle, we'll get the 4-day closure as well. That would start to paint the picture that we are going to go test this daily lower high area at 65.5 by the 4-day basis band. And then above there, we need to see, of course, 67.2 to 3 taken out. From the 4-day perspective, that gives us a target of, for volatility, it gives us a target of the overhead resistance at $69,000 by the upper first. And then, of course, going to test the highs again around the upper second. And that is coming in right in the wick highs here. Might even be around the closes if we do get a subsequent closure and it has not run it yet. Somewhere around the actual closing highs, 71.5. Realistically looking like 70 to 73. Any closes above it, we're looking at the highs and higher, up to around that $75,000 area. Upper third is currently coming in at 75.5. So if Bitcoin did move more aggressively to the downside, I would still be looking at the lower low and the support down below as likely areas to get picked up. Just like if Bitcoin were to aggressively move to the upside from here and start to push into the upper second, upper third area, I'd be looking for an initial swing of the actual high side structures to begin, and then come back to it later for expansive phase to kick off. And we can move on to the 5-day, which is going to be closing with the next 3-day candle. And you can see Bitcoin's done a fairly good job of trying to hold this basis. If it does close below it, however, and that is coming in at $63,000, we'll call it. If it does close below it, that opens up the support to be retested again between 61,350 from October of 2021 to March of 2021. Those monthlies and that monthly quarterly down to the lower first. And you can see this was also nice big expansion to a more macro compression. And you can see that it's not quite ready for any type of an expansion yet because we are just now seeing this compressive phase start to really kick off more aggressively in terms of its compression read on the bands. But if you want to find support, lower first standard deviation on any kind of mean reversion after a nice expansion like this is a beautiful area to look. And of course, this is coming almost directly in line with this lower low over here at 65.5, 56.5. Jeez. Below there, and we do have to entertain moves down to the supports here again, somewhere around $53,000 to $50,000 by this lower second standard deviation. Now, to be fair, the lower second is currently at like 49,500. That could very well get hit on a 5-day if we did see the lower first lost. Of course, that would be losing the lower low of the most recent lower low move at that 56,500. So, I mean, obvious area to look is right into support here, possibly a swing down to that lower second below it. And that's where I'm getting that $50,000 target on the more aggressive downside area. I would be looking for price to get pretty well picked up in this area. If price headed this way, because of the expansion to compression, I'd be looking for price to get a big bounce in that area. Could it wick, in lower term time frames down further? Absolutely, but it's a compression phase, so I'm not really interested in too much more. That would be really aggressive to start looking for any more than that. Weekly, we are seeing a bit of a range look on the bands. This is quite nice because it's very clear. You can see that just below the March of 2021 monthly quarterly there at 58.8, we have the weekly basis band coming in around 57,700 to 57,800 depending on your chart. And below there, We have, of course, our support. So any kind of closes below there, we're looking at the actual lower low getting run at 56.5, possibly a swing down below it to sweep it. That starts to break down on a close. We're looking to the supports at $53,000 to $50,000. And that does, because any closes below a basis band, that opens up the volatility level all the way down to the lower first standard deviation. And we can see that this is now updated to come in right here at this monthly at $47,000. So this would be the next big area to look down to. If $50,000 started to break down, we're looking to the monthlies at 47,000 to 45.5. I know it's a very bearish read, but it's still a bull market, even if Bitcoin got there. And boy, what a gift that would be, because that's way below Bitcoin production cost right now. You can see to the upside, the upper first standard deviation on the weekly is coming in at around $68,000. So just below the prior cycle high there at 69K. If Bitcoin did start closing above there, then we can entertain the highs and higher. Of course, on the weekly, we have the high coming in at, on a close, 71,300. Of course, that wick high at 73,835. And then above there, I've mentioned quite a few times, 75 to 78. We can see that the upper second standard deviation is coming in at 78, almost $79,000. So very likely area to get tagged if Bitcoin moves aggressively back to the highs and starts breaking above the highs. Probably going to see initial resistance around those areas. So be well aware of it. And as we come into, the second half of the month, I'll get into some of the longer term timeframes. I do want to make note of a few things of confluence, or a few areas of confluence on the monthly, though, just to kind of remind you of where things are. The monthly upper first standard deviation is right here at around 51,800 or so. It's 51.5. It's coming in between this 50,800 and 51.8 weekly from December of 2021 and August of 2021, respectively. So again, more confluence in that $50,000 to $53,000 area. Only actionable if Bitcoin starts to lose the March monthly again, $58,800 to $59,000, and then subsequently loses the lower low that we have on that daily at 56,500. Of course, this is the lower low on the weekly as well. Now, for the monthly, you lose the monthly wick low. We're going to be heading down. Test that upper first. Above, we can see above the current monthly high, which is that 65.5. Then we're looking to the upper second, which is coming in right around that high at 67,200. So again, we're getting confluences all over the place. Above 67,200, looking to $69,000 to $70,000. And then, of course, the monthly close opens up here, 71,300. The wick high, 73,835. And the upper third standard deviation is then a candidate for a potential move on the monthly time frame as it relates to those lower term timeframes. And this is where we're getting kind of the mid to low $80,000 targets from. And this is coming in at $83,000. Typically in a more aggressive move from the longer term timeframes, when Bitcoin initiates any kind of a pullback and consolidation and then spikes back up, if it's going to be very bullish and break that all-time high anytime soon, we typically see it closing outside of the upper third. So that's where we're kind of getting like $85,000 as a nice potential target, maybe even it wicks higher. Who knows? Closes typically come in above there, though. And I am not of the opinion that this bull market is anywhere close to resolved yet. But you can see that momentum is turned against price on the monthly here. 70,300 is the momentum pivot on the monthly. What I'd be looking for in this particular bull market is, even if Bitcoin were to dive lower, is a nice bullish reset on the monthly, as the 2-month is nice and pointed to the upside here. 28,500 to 600 is going to be the momentum pivot. And of course, we have the quarterly there coming in at around $34,000. So I'm not worried about the very long-term time frames. I'm not worried about any of this. I've been short the entire way through since the all-time high. So I still am taking long positions and counter trend trading that on the other side. and I am still buying in these zones for spot. Now, of course, none of this is financial advice, as I would buy more the further the price drops. A lot of this has to do with the production cost on Bitcoin. And I've called this out a few different times since Charles Edwards of Caprioli Investments has, kind of updated his newsletter coming into the halving about production cost. It was at around $30,000. That's kind of your floor price for electricity. And, we've seen, I don't think he's updated this yet. Let me look here. It doubled at the halving, basically from 30 to 60. It's somewhere with the difficulty adjustments. It's somewhere around where price is right now. I want to close that out and make sure it's removed from my favorites and then add it again. And hopefully my keyboard's kind of far away from me here, so sorry, bear with me. Let's go ahead and re-add it and see if he's updated the indicator yet. I don't think he has. I might have to get into the Pine script and do it myself. Nope, he updated it. So it was lagging. All right, so we can see that with some of the, now that it has updated, we can see the difficulty adjustment is taken into account now because it didn't update until, well, yesterday, actually. All right, so this is all right. I like this. Good. Because it does kind of take into account because there was a lag. 420 was the actual halving back here. So this is where production cost actually doubled. So this is lagging by a couple weeks, probably to take into account any kind of adjustments. I don't think this is actually reading the adjustments necessarily. It's reading the historical bars and the closes from the mining side. I believe it's aggregating the mining side stuff. Let me look at the Pine editor real quick. Yeah, so it's taking days and it's aggregating days. So he's updating it based on the miners themselves. All right, cool. So it is kind of taking adjustments into account, and you can see that the production cost for Bitcoin, the lowest production cost, meaning that this is not realistic. Like you're not finding, unless they're getting electricity for free and they don't owe anything for the miners, they don't pay for maintenance or anything else. The actual electricity cost is roughly the lowest cost, I believe, is set to about 4 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's that was $30,000. That has now doubled. We can see that it's coming in currently at around, let's go ahead and turn the bands off here real quick so that that's not interfering with the actual read here. All right, it's coming in at $59,800, so right around $60,000. So it doubled. And of course, that's reflecting the halving of the block reward. So from 6.25 to 3.125. And anytime that you can buy Bitcoin below what it costs miners to mine it, you're doing damn well. And I do want to point out some of the other times in Bitcoin's history real quick here that we have seen Bitcoin spike into production, the lowest production costs, and trade below it. You can see here we had we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days where it traded below the lowest price to produce a Bitcoin. We've had it spike off of that area and trade below it. But in terms of close opens, we had 8 total days. We have the next area or next time that we saw this, well, the last time that we saw this before the bear market lows was around the last halving. So we had the halving come in. We had Bitcoin trade for a grand total of close open basis, 4 days underneath production costs. Even in the worst case scenario, and this was in March of 2020, we all know what was going on then, it traded below production costs, but did not breach below it on a close open. And the time before that was the actual bear market bottoms where it did not even trade to close below. It traded below. Of course, adjustment down for difficulty there. We had the bear market low come in, but I think you get the idea. It's very rare. So on the bear market bottoms, we typically find it around production costs, spike into it in pretty crazy events as well. We then around the halvings see it sometimes trade and close below it, but it's for very brief periods of time. And then of course you see that as as uh, as Bitcoin kind of trades sideways, we did get difficulty adjustments down, and we are going to see more difficulty adjustments down. We are not filling blocks right now to the same level we were post halving, of course, with runes. But yeah, traded well above it for quite a long period of time. And, we saw it spike into it, start getting into Bitcoin production costs. This was back in 2022. We all know what was happening around here. We had Luna, we had FTX, we had a whole bunch of BlockFi and Celsius stuff going on around these lows. And then of course the final low there coming into the FTX events or event, I should say. But yeah, spiked off of it for that big move back down where everybody was looking for it to go lower to $12,000, and it bottomed out around 19.5, closed around 20K. We were well aware that was going to be a possibility. Ran this structure over here and found support right on the high side structure here, which was beautiful back then for those of you that were around during that period of time. We have not really seen it trade back above production costs until right here in February of this year. And go figure that this area above production cost or total production cost to produce a Bitcoin only began to occur around February of this year after it breached above and held around $50,000. Now, if it were to dive back down there, I'm telling you, it's very, very rare that you get an opportunity to buy Bitcoin below production cost. And I believe that this indicator might even be a little conservative on this as well. You can see that the high side production cost is coming in at $100,000. It would not be a surprise to see Bitcoin trade to $100,000 and above. I've talked about this prior. 130 is a major level. 125 to 130 or something like that as another major level to the upside. So this even trading around production costs, not financial advice, of course, but I do consider this a value area, so to speak. So this is, I'm glad that he updated this. That's very good. So we'll keep an eye on that and see, how many blocks close and when it starts to reflect the adjustments in hash rate difficulty, I should say. I'm trying to do like 4 things at once and my phone's ringing. My apologies. Let's go ahead and pull up mempool just to see. We had some adjustments and we have another adjustment. Oh, no. So this actually looks pretty good right here. So if we go to mempool, our previous adjustment down was 5.62%. And I believe for when this updated, the Caprioli indicator there for production cost updated, it's taking this particular adjustment into account because it updated on Sunday. So just getting that in, very good. And we actually see that Bitcoin is threatening to increase difficulty, which quite honestly is something you'd want to see. Is difficulty remain high, price will then have to reflect that and hang out at minimum around the bottom side production costs for Bitcoin. So in this case, we have some encouraging signs. It's still pretty bearish locally in the lower term timeframes, but I'll end with this. Start seeing 63,200 closed above on like a 4 or 6 hour. Pay attention to 63.5 on the daily. Okay, if we see Bitcoin starting to push above 63.5, mark up to around the upper first at $64,000 to that lower high at 65.5. Bitcoin starts closing above there. It's going to look good at minimum to start testing up a little bit further. might pull back in lower term timeframes, but from that point, I would be looking for things to eventually try to test up for that 72 at 72. Man, 67, 200 to 300. It's one of those days. It's been one of those weeks, or 2 weeks, I should say. But in this case, there are encouraging things starting to develop for the bulls, but keep in mind, it's still a downtrend. We have not broken it just yet, and that is what you want to see coming up next. So that was quite a lot on Bitcoin today. There are a few other things that we can look at, though, and that we have not actually revisited in a while. And we can see from a swing chart, if you want to define some areas of interest to the upside, you want to get out ahead of this, and for the sake of argument, let's say it bottoms out around the basis band here, even if it runs the low again. That would give us by the way, I don't see Bitcoin coming all the way down to 38.5, which was a monthly spike on the weekly. That was the last swing low prior to the current structure that we see. If we pull a fib on this, we can see the Bitcoin has been closing above the 618. That's good. That is where you want to see things. And we can see that just below the current low of this particular move, that's coming in around the 50% level, right? So that is coming in at 56,168, so almost 56,200. We can see that the 382 coming in line with this order block area on the weekly, which is right there at $53,000 to $50,000. Now, if Bitcoin does start to break out anytime in the near future above 73,835, that swing high, we can see that the 1272 is coming in at 83,400. I do want you to note that that is where the upper third standard deviation on the monthly is. 1272 on a fib pull like this would be an area of overhead resistance in a blue sky breakout. Going back to the weekly here, you can see the 1414 is sitting just above there, right around the weekly upper third standard deviation. That's your $88,000 to around $90,000 by the weekly upper third. We can see the 1618s coming in here at 99,000. So there's your $100,000 area. That's also right around where the total production cost for Bitcoin is right now. You can see above there 1786 to 1888, bracketing around the 100 to 105 level, the two spot around 110. And then as we start getting further up here, we can see that we're getting into the areas of interest where I do think that Bitcoin might put in an intermediate top for the bull market. And I say intermediate top, and this is something we'll discuss as time goes on, especially after Bitcoin breaks its all-time high again. But we see around 118 to 120 by the 272 to the 2414 by 123, and then the 2618 by 130. So there's many different fibs that you can pull that are going to line up with these numbers. Now, it really depends on your style of analysis. Are you Elliott wave? If you're Elliott wave, you're looking for probably 100,000 to 130, possibly even to 150, and then well beyond that. You can see pulling the prior cycle bear market, the 1272s coming in where 83,500. Go figure. That we just did a local fib pull, and that's exactly where we were looking. We see the 1414 coming in at $91,000, 1618. Again, nice 1618 right there at $100,000. 1786 to 1888 coming in between 100 and 116. So there's your 100 to 110 to 115. We've got the two spot coming in at 122. We've got the 272 at 140. And then we've got the 2414 at 144. So 150 is not out of the question. 2618 is right above there at about $155,000. So this is something we're going to get further and further into only once Bitcoin breaks 73,835, because we will be in blue sky territory. Fibs are going to be our friend along with volatility. The read on volatility is going to be very, very interesting to keep an eye on. Especially on the monthly, whenever Bitcoin gets back above the upper second, starts pushing that upper third, if it closes above the upper third, we're looking at really aggressive moves. And that could change the picture. We might get, $100,000 and then an even number pullback kind of thing, major fib level, all that good stuff. But we typically see consecutive closes during the run, the real run. And we have not actually seen the real run yet, believe it or not. I know a lot of people think we have. It's over, right? That's what I keep hearing. It's all over. It's going to fall apart. Bitcoin back to 12K or whatever. I've seen that again, which is crazy. But this is literally it is a deviation from prior cycles in that we made a new all-time high before the halving. But we have bigger players in the market now. We have actual retail market participants via the ETFs that are in this market. And just so you understand, BlackRock, Fidelity, and all these companies, they don't own the Bitcoin. The market making companies don't even own the Bitcoin. Only the ETF players that have Bitcoin in custody, it's a claim for the actual assets under management, and that's portfolios that they manage. Where do they make their money then if they don't own the Bitcoin directly? Well, they make their money on the arbitrage between the ETF creation redemption process and the Bitcoin price. So that's where we get big arbitrage plays, and then market makers participate by owning shares of the ETF. So you're probably seeing a lot of that starting to come out as those players, those market makers get identified. They can own it and they can market make and still have reserves, just so you know. There's nothing illegal about that. So I do want you to understand that when people say BlackRock owns all the Bitcoin, they own billions of dollars of Bitcoin, they don't own any Bitcoin. They own assets under management. They don't even own those assets under management, to be quite honest with you. You need to understand that they manage those assets, and how do they make their money? They can throw their weight around because, the portfolio holders with them give them the authority to manage their portfolio, right? So wherever they decide to put liquidity is where it's going to go. But, they don't directly own any of it. It's their customers that own it. And, people who are in the ETFs can say, no, I don't want you to sell my portfolio shares of, IBIT or whatever it might be. And in this case, I do want to make one other thing known. If Bitcoin breaks down in like a major way, and this is not something that I do feel is realistic, so I do want to couch this all as a discussion of theory, and it's to address some of the kind of crazy bear theories that I see a lot of. And that is that Bitcoin's, gonna collapse, absolutely collapse. And I want to reference the Bitcoin production cost again. And this is just going to be a fairly quick conversation, but I think it needs to be had. If Bitcoin trades below production costs for an extended period of time, which we have not seen in Bitcoin's history, just so you understand, this has not happened. Okay, Bitcoin has traded below production costs, but for very brief periods of time, typically around bear market bottoms, during extreme crash scenarios, or just post-halving, right? As miners adjust, equipment's updated, new power deals are worked out, all that kind of stuff, right? But you can see the high side production cost is up here right around $100,000. That's probably more in line with what it actually costs to produce. You can see the medians coming in there around $70,000, the current highs. That's right around where our pool's at for production cost. It's actually a little bit lower, probably like at 68, if I had to guess. I'd have to go look at the numbers again. But the reality is, if Bitcoin traded aggressively below production costs, what would happen? So I'm going to tell you, this is this would be the play that if you're a conspiracy theorist, you could entertain. And that would be that the bigger players in the market, the BlackRock's, Fidelities, and all the big players in the ETF space who also have investments in the mining space because they own, they allocate big portions of their clients' portfolios to these Bitcoin miners and companies, holding companies respectively, is that they wash out a whole bunch of smaller mining operations by keeping Bitcoin below production cost. And then they go through and they buy them all up in centralized mining. That is something that if you are on the more conspiratorial end of things and believe that they would be willing to damage their own businesses and potentially lose clients over it just to damage Bitcoin in that way to centralize it, in terms of its mining, which is already pretty highly centralized, by the way. Um, that's where you could entertain that because that's what you would see. All right. So if Bitcoin were to trade aggressively below production cost, you will see miners go out of business. They can only take the pain for so long. And if it stayed below there for an extended period of time, and I am talking, in the range of, a month or two, maybe a quarter or more under there, it would really start to put the hurt on smaller mining operations. They would then have to sell. Who do you think's got the liquidity to buy? The bigger players. Who's invested in them? The bigger ETF players, obviously, the big asset under management companies in the world. I, again, want to reiterate, I do not believe that that is, one, it's not a technical scenario that you can even entertain when looking at the chart. It's just silly. And two, it does not make financial sense, in my personal opinion, as somebody from that space and learned how to do what I do in that space. It does not make sense, because your targets for growing portfolios are always increasing, not decreasing. So you don't want a big drawdown in your portfolios that you're managing. That's a good way to lose clients. So that just doesn't seem like a realistic scenario to me. I don't see why they would want to damage their own messaging and marketing around it as well. Yes, if you're more on the conspiratorial side of things, you could maybe look at players that are far bigger than those companies. Now, many would argue that they're agents of the state as it is, but if you were looking at Bitcoin production costs, Bitcoin trading well below production cost, more than likely you're going to see it picked up because who's going to be there to pick it up? It would be a massive fight, and you'd probably see nation states involved, not just the big asset under management players. And, we'd be looking at maybe in that case a true black swan, nothing that we couldn't chart on the weekly. It's a weekly downtrend. Don't fade the weekly downtrend until it changes, right? 65.5 at minimum on the swing. And that is, still available for a further downside move, but any extended period, and it would have to be an extended period of time, in which case I think you'd see nation states involved more than what some of these people are floating out there about your BlackRocks and Fidelities of the world, which, yeah, of course, they would probably scoop up a bunch of miners, but you'd see a big fight in the world over this. So that's anecdotal. Not really. I did want to address it, though, because I keep seeing like BlackRock's trying to trade below production costs so they can scoop up all the miners. Like, okay, cool. And what's your evidence for this? Oh, it's the outflows, man. Oh, you mean that it's pulling back with the rest of Bitcoin price and the rest of the markets? Oh, okay. Weird. Never seen that before. Yeah, no, I'll stop. I'll stop there. Traditional markets pulling back a little bit here. We had the gap fill on traditional markets for Dow. This is a trend shift. I had mentioned, anywhere below the upper first on Dow Jones, we're looking at 39,000. Probably looking for it to try for a gap fill down below at minimum anywhere between 38.6 and 38.4 down here. It's almost, yeah, 38.4. No, I had that right. I would come back to it after that. It does need to hold around 38,000 though, to remain with a positive outlook. Now, I am going to tell you a little bit about some of the dangers in traditional markets right now, because that will have, of course, an outside effect on liquidity flows into Bitcoin, and same for Nasdaq here. We did not really have a subsequent gap to fill, but if it does lose around 18,000, looking around 17,900 to possibly 17,700, 600, 700 area. If it loses that, be aware of 17.5 to around 17,350. You don't want to see it trading anywhere below there. If it starts to, it's running the lows, possibly lower, back to its prior all-time high area around 16.7 to 17,000, where it put in this last lower low on the daily and weekly. SPY, same thing. Right around the highs, you want to see it holding around 515 to the basis here at around 508 to 510. Anywhere below there, absolutely needs to hold around 505 to 500 points. Loses that, it's running the lows, possibly lower, to all the way back to possibly 480 again. You really need to see it holding around 500 points. Now, if you're looking at this daily structure, the big danger is if this begins to turn here, and if at any point it takes out these lower lows, in this case at 493, at 16,969, nice, which it spiked perfectly on NASDAQ here. And Dow, you need to see this zone around 17,700 to really, I would say, 37.7 to around that 38.1 to 38K. If those lows are lost, it's looking an awful lot like distribution. I just want to put it out there. That is the downside risk. But we do have a trend change on the daily. We have beautiful lows that are being put in on Dow. Bounced in the expected area around a prior consolidation above the prior all-time highs. Looks good in that respect. Looks good on Nasdaq's respect as well. We've got nice higher low structure. You do want to see this put in further higher lows. If it starts making any kind of puts in a high and starts making any kind of a lower low from here, we're looking at either a long form consolidation or a possible move to distribution. Same for SPY here. So I do want to warn you of that and tie that in with Dixie here. Dixie is looking at a possible daily consolidation low, as long as it's closing dailies anywhere above 104.50. So, this can take a while, but above 104.50, this is looking fine. If it takes out its lower high here that it just put in at around 105.75, I'd be marking it up to around 106 to 106, low 106 region, to that upper second at around the mid 106 region at the highs here, around 106.50. Above there, I'm looking at 107 to 107.40. Anywhere above 107.40, and we're going to see re-expansion. Probably, nope, I'm lying. It could reject and swing up there. You still don't want to see it, because that would be, if it got any kind of a monthly above 107.40, we're looking at it resolving this macro structure on the monthly, and at minimum pushing the upper second standard deviation. Any closes above there at 108 to 109, we're looking for it to run its highs up here again, somewhere around 110 to 112, and then 115, and possibly expansion to the upside. That would not be a good look for risk assets, that's for sure. But I do want you to note that Bitcoin is changing in the way that it's evaluated. It's not being evaluated as much as a risk asset anymore. Um, and I can tell you that from the insider players don't really see it that way. They are looking at it more of as more of a hedge against inflation. That's their pitch anyway. So let's go ahead back to Bitcoin real quick here. And I did want to note that on the daily here, we have Powell speaking today. We've got him coming up on, no, I'm sorry, that's tomorrow, not today. Powell's going to speak. We've got production costs coming out. Then we've got retail core inflation numbers coming out on Thursday, the 15th. So is that Thursday or Wednesday? Wednesday, the 15th. Sorry. And then subsequently we have building permits and stuff like that for usually commercial stuff. Has an effect on the economy, but the outlooks on that don't really matter. It's the structure on Bitcoin that you want to watch. It's all about the structure. The news, by the time you're hearing what is happening from Powell, from, the different news outlets, from Bloomberg or whatever, by the time you're hearing about this stuff, you're already behind, right? So if you want to know what's going to happen in the future, you watch the charts, whether it's the traditional market charts or Bitcoin or whatever it might be, because all of the information that you need that is right there in the live auction, because you're actually watching sentiment in real time. You're watching the actual auction occur in real time. I mean, here on TradingView, if you have a premium account, you can go down to the second chart and you can see what the auction looks like, right? It is telling you everything you need to know about sentiment. Anytime you hear about sentiment, anytime you hear about projections and stuff like that, you're the last person to know if you're hearing it from the news, because they're the last ones to know. So keep that in mind. Nice little move up here on the second chart to test a little bit further up, maybe test around $63,000. I'm going to open it up to the chat here. I'm going to throw on some tunes real quick in the background while we have the Ultra Degen second chart on here, and see if anybody's got any questions or comments. Let me go ahead and unmute that, get some music rolling to cover for some of the silence while I read here. Yes. So I will be doing some, I'm going to be pretty active in some of the communities that many of you are part of, including my own, coming up here shortly. There is more than likely an announcement coming up from Pepe Ordinal's Maxi, which is an Ordinals community where I am going to be doing some TA stuff. Maybe some more stuff, we'll see. Of course, NBO, where I'm a team member, which is a new Bitcoin order. That is, I have some ideas for some things that I'd like to do to kind of get more active in the community there and get more people active in the community, as well as Nat Monkeys and Sigma. A lot of really cool communities and community members. And yeah, everything's going to remain free. Probably going to do some Discord stuff, some Spaces stuff, and of course live stream stuff. Working out details. But yeah, a lot of cool stuff coming up. And of course, for those of you from those communities, New Bitcoin Order, of course, that's family right there. Thanks for showing up and showing out as always. Those of you from Pepe Ordinal's Maxis or Palm, awesome to have you hanging out with me. Of course, my own community. And then, of course, Nat Monkey's always showing out in force. And Sigma's always showing out in force. Great communities. Great communities. Sigma's got some cool, interesting stuff going as well. Pepe Ordinal's Maxi's got some pretty neat announcements coming up. I don't know if any of you are are from that, if you're not from that community, I do suggest you check it out. It's just a cool place in general, but also a really cool project, as is Sigma, Map Monkeys, and NBO, obviously. Yeah, Loki's got some cool stuff going on. It's the quiet times right now, and what do you do in the quiet times? You build. Oh, you need me to turn the music down a little bit? Okay, sorry. I'll get that a little bit more under control. A little bit more. Let's see, is that good? All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at that chat. Hi, Bobby. Don is here. Hi, Don. Jedi's here. A few others are here. I see a lot of people that are here, but just not chatting right now. Yeah, it's a little bit early for the streams, so. Bobby said, good old bearish retest. Yep. Seems like 1-to-1 price action of April to June 2023. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna find confluences like that. Yep. Thank you, Bobby. You're talking about Gareth, Bobby, with his 12K. I've heard his 30K stump speech. It's kind of silly. Look, I never say never, but we've got some real changes that would be happening if Bitcoin were to significantly drop. Look, I mean, Bitcoin's bullish on the monthly. Last higher lows at 25K. So I mean, like, I have no problems with any of the price action, even if it did dump out aggressively. Jedi says on the auction sentiment port, thanks. Made a lot of sense. But I'd previously been unsure of what people talk about. Well, I mean, because they take sentiment, a lot of the sentiment measurements are search related, because there's multiple domains to gauge sentiment. But the ultimate way to gauge sentiment is actual auction. It's the actual auction. It's price. That's how you gauge sentiment. Oh, but Google Analytics say that Bitcoin search is down and retail is not back. And it's like, that doesn't matter. You're going to see it in the price. We can tell that they're not here. But I do actually want to call something out. I had this argument come up. It was an argument not to me directly, but that was shown to me, is that this is all because of BlackRock and Fidelity and all of them. I want to point out that in January, what pushed price up from the lows, like all of this they were saying into January, into the launch of the ETFs, was like, you know, the ETF launch, you saw the spike highs and then the move back down, the lower low, and then the move up. But I mean, this kind of discounts all of the moves off of the bottom here, and the OI that was building up in the market to that point was not them. This is them plus all of the OI in the market, plus spot buyers and ETFs. So yes, you can call this move down to the all-time high. Yes, a lot of that is driven by the ETFs. But to take the entire bull market since the bottom is the case that they're making all the way to 50K and say that this is the reason why it was all them. No, it wasn't. It was just silly. It's discounting the fact that ETF launched right here, spiked the highs. You had the hype coming into it. Who pushed price up before the ETF launch? The initial investors weren't investing hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe in aggregate, but you see $100 million moving every day on Bitcoin. You see billions of dollars moving every day on Bitcoin, right? So in terms of flows, and in this case, it's just kind of silly. Yes, hoovering up the amount of coins that they were hoovering up leading into a halving event did push price to its new all-time high prior to the halving. So yeah, I'll give you that. But this market moved significantly from $40,000 right into that liquidity event, which, by the way, they're discounting that they were net outflows nearly this entire move up from Grayscale. You had net outflows from Grayscale here, net outflows the whole move up from Grayscale. So yes, in aggregate, you were getting spot picked up by the other players in the ETF space, and now they're beginning to turn that tide, and even in some cases seeing some redemptions. But it's not anything. It's Bitcoin wouldn't have needed that event to do what it's doing, is what I'm trying to say. One way or another, liquidity was going to flow. It could have consolidated longer, maybe even went into a little bit of more of a downtrend. Sure, no. But this kind of a move would have happened prior to that. And yes, a lot of this is ETF selling and redemptions and arbitrage and all that stuff. But it's also miners. That's something that you got to take into account. Let's go to, we can do miner reserves. And we can zoom out, right? And you can look at the miner reserves. Oh, this is years. We want, where did miners start offloading, right? Where were their reserves going down? Well, they had to make a lot of money up from after the, from post bear market, right? So once they got back in above their cost basis, which by the way, the floor was $30,000, the zone where they started to, accumulate and then offload and accumulate and offload to make money and fill their coffers again with cash was right around where? The $40,000 region. You had all the way up to $47,000 at that monthly, right? And then back down to $38,500. Where's the basement cost? It was $30,000, right? So what have we seen since it went up going into the halving? We saw miner reserves coming down. Why? Gotta make money for all that time that you spent mining during the bear markets. So that's one aspect of it. Got miner position index here. We can go to some fundamental stuff. It's cool. It's not going to affect my outlook on the charts, by the way. Typically this is looking a little bit different. So this is your miner position flow as it relates to its 1 year average of outflows. Higher value shows that miners are sending more coins. So you saw this where? In the downtrend leading into that 38.5 monthly spike, right? 38.5 was like a key monthly level. It hit it right on the dollar. You saw huge miner outflows. And now we are experiencing very minimal miner outflows because it's all preparation for price moving up or appreciating. And then, possibly put in a higher low right here, right now. Who knows? Maybe in the next couple of days. And then breaking above that all-time high, getting above cost basis, and then you'll see this begin to tick back up as miners basically realize some of that profit. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that. Let's see where OI is. Let's take a look. Yeah, open interest ticked up pretty significantly on this move up, and significantly above where it was when it made this high. And we're in lower high territory being confirmed here, possibly in the lower term time frames. This is only an hourly, but we have higher highs on OI, so we do have a bit of a bearish divergence there. But if Bitcoin kind of hangs out and higher lows its way out of here on something like a 4 hour, then that's just fine. Not worried about it. Funding is actually negative on some exchanges, so interesting. Actually, it's pretty on par on most exchanges for stablecoin margin and coin margin, but then it's negative on some, like Kraken. It's negative. WooX, it's negative. Bybit's looking to turn negative, so it looks like we have more shorts coming into the market around this particular failed initial swing of this cluster, around 62 650 to around that 63 500. So I got some significant resistance coming in there. I would suspect if it starts to break above, you're going to see shorts get washed a bit. I don't think it's like anything crazy. But we do have a not insignificant move up in open interest right now. So runes are nuking. Runes, huh? Yeah, I would imagine they're probably nuking. I mean, Bitcoin's going to hoover up most of this liquidity. And then, of course, you've got probably shorts trying to cover too at this particular moment. Let's look at runes. Get it up on the other screen here. Oh yeah. Oh, look at that. This market cap is not real. Yeah, we're looking at Rissic, Ledger. We're looking at volume. Really. I mean, Dog Go to the Moon volume is still maintaining its lead, as it is the most widely distributed one. Rissic right there behind it. That's a pretty big move down, 12 sats, huh? Get under? Might have gotten under. 3.74. Yeah, this is Dog Go to the Moon's playing around where it was on the prior big move down. Ledger, the first Bitcoin dog, has taken a big old fat dump on the floor. Pups World Peace, big move back down. This is big. I thought they were like at 700. They opened at like 700 sats. I was saying GameStop Corporation must have just got listed. Donald, yeah, I bought when this first listed and then started selling into it. Decentralized is not been putting on much volume, and people are just listing. Wall Street Bets, 195% move up on $40,000 of volume, which is nothing. If you're going to be trading any of this stuff, the top two, you really got to be looking at Dog and Rissic. There's no reason to really look at. I mean, unless another rune is doing more than 400,000 in daily volume, it's probably not worth looking at, to be quite honest. At least not right now, in my personal opinion. And don't let market cap lie to you. Market cap for like Fayu is completely wrong. And this thing's been moving like molasses too. They only have 1% supplied liquid right now, so be careful if you're in that. So, not too much else to say today regarding price. As you can tell, I'm a little slow today. It's a Monday, slow day. Oh, some of them are on TradingView now. Is Dog on TradingView too? She said RuneCoin is Risik. Yeah, I think they listed on Gate first. Oof, rough. For not being a dog coin, this is rough. Yeah, this is gonna be. At minimum, it's got to regain 0.008 to start turning things around. Dog go to the moon. Painting a little bit better of a chart, believe it or not, because RuneCoin hasn't found its low yet. It looks like Dog is already found its low and is retesting. If it breaks down from it, it's nuked. This thing is nuked. Going down to like some of these volume bars over here at around 0.001. Yeah, this is actually significantly worse than OTC stuff. No, maybe not. Maybe not. Looking at, yeah, no, 0025. Yeah, the chart on this isn't too bad. This needs to go through a probably pretty long form reaccumulation. Once RuneCoin finds its lows, then I'd be looking for the same on it. Yeah, it could have already put in its low though. Do want to kind of make that known. It could have already put in its low by the lower third, but this is, it's bearish below 0.008. That's going to be kind of the metric there for this one. And I would say it's even bearish below 0.009. So kind of give it a zone here. Like heavily bearish. And then Dog is going to be lights out. Poor Dog's going to be put down below 0.0019. And it's got actually a lot of, it's got to make up a lot here. It's got to get above 0.0033 to actually have any kind of a hope of turning this structure around. But it does look as though it's trying to go into reaccumulation, whereas we aren't quite there yet with RuneCoin. RuneCoin looks a bit more bearish right now. You said there was another one that's already up? Wanko is up. Wanko looks like it's trying for a reaccumulation, and you know, it listed and then straight down, so this would actually be, it's probably getting pretty close. I mean, if it loses this area it's in right now, it's going to step down a bit more to 10 cents even or so, or 0.98 cents. Anywhere below there, it's continuation for further downside. It's 10 cents even. So, and it actually could pop up above 19 cents pretty easily. This is log scale, so just be aware of that. This actually doesn't look too bad, but still heavily bearish below below 29 cents. But this looks more like this is actually, because it's a little bit tighter range, although it's breaking down, as long as it's holding above 10 cents, it's fine. If it starts to significantly break down below, there on, I would say even an hourly, this thing is probably pretty cooked. I would imagine this is expansion down as well on the 4 hour. On the hourly, looks like at minimum it wants to retest 10 cents, but if it does regain around 19 cents, this, almost 20 cents, it's looking for a pump. I'd be looking 25 cents, maybe even 26 cents, to around that 29 cent region if it can break out. That's actually the more attractive chart out of those. I mean, they're bearish, but they're bearish into more than likely reaccumulation. I would expect RuneCoin to kind of follow what they're all doing and start to reaccumulate. Unless they all break down further, then it's a race to find the actual bottom. Lobo was the other one you mentioned. Yeah, looks the same. It looks like it found a basing point at this insanely low number. So as long as it holds this area here, as long as it holds the lows, it's good. 0.0006 cents. It needs to take out 0.000736, and then it can at minimum test up further, but still bearish, and in a consolidation or reaccumulation below about 0.009 cents. So this looks like a typical, these all look like typical reaccumulation structures on the lows, but they need to hold them or else it's going to be more distribution. Other than that, yeah. If you're bullish on rune coins, then these are the areas that you're going to be picking up. I picked up some more. I want to say it was below where it is now though, but it's in. Maybe it was on those other lows because it was not recent that I picked it up. It was when everything crashed out. Let's look. Yeah, so it was down here somewhere. Yeah, it was somewhere around the weekend because we were talking about it in one of the chats. I remember that. When was this? It was somewhere, it was probably right around where it is now. It's where I was picking it up. If it dives lower, I'll pick up a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, below 15 to 20 sats, which is a wide margin to be looking at for this. I think is probably a pretty fair price. If it dives lower, I would say it's listed. It's probably going to get, all of these are probably going to get listed on more exchanges. So yeah, I would be entertaining this as, the degen plays. If you're in runes, just go for the big dogs, literally. Dogs on Poloniacs, Bitmart, CoinEx, BitTrue. You're probably going to see all of these, like Dog and RuneCoin. You're probably going to see them on Binance at some point soon. Yeah, so Dog is actually listed on a few more, but OKX is probably the big one here for RuneCoin. Then you got CoinEx and then Bitmart. Gate.io will list anything. I think Satoshi is Is that only on Gate? Yeah, it's only on Gate.io. Oof. Oh, that's harsh. Ouch. Wow. Okay, what did this wick get to? 60 cents? Oh yeah, that's harsh. Sorry, Satoshi. So it happens when you have a massive pre-mine and then open the mint to public. I think I told you guys I shorted the shit out of this when it listed. Yeah, this is not a good look. It's also only on one exchange, so you know the bigger players that you're gonna want to. I mean, whoever's got the most exchange distribution is in the lead in that stock right now. I didn't even know they were listed on some of the others, but that's one of the reasons why you're going to see aggregate volume being higher on Dog, and I imagine, you know, if you're going to rate the exchanges, RuneCoin's got, you know, the best listing so far on OKX, but it's a it's a bear coin market instead of a rune coin market. Yeah, I mean, you're not even getting much. I mean, when you go through a list on like ordinals and you see barely any pending sales in the past day, you know, it's just indicative of this is just not where the focus is. So you see liquidity there for a little while. Oh, well, if RuneCoin's getting involved with ETH, yeah, meme land and all those things, I mean, it could be a nice shot of liquidity for it, but it's still going to be all about where it's listed. You want the bigger exchange. You want the Bybits and Binances of the world. Even in comparison to some of the exchanges that I pointed out, like FEMX does more volume in some cases. So, yeah, just remember that farming coins and staking coins is all just an artificial supply restriction, right? And typically it's for more of the same or for an alternate coin of some sort. So you're getting a trade-off, and then when things are unstaked or you know, people are done farming, they distribute, right? CZ would have listed instantly. Yeah, he would have been all over the Bitcoin stuff. He probably would have tried to bridge a lot of it to BNB. Probably would have had them as BNB pairs. But yeah. All right, guys and gals, I am gonna wrap it up here, and we will revisit tomorrow in a recorded format. I will stream it. I believe I'll stream it while it is uploading. I want to thank everybody from the Ordinals communities, and of course all of you who are regularly here for technical analysis. I want to thank you all for coming through and hanging out. Wasn't actually expecting too many people today anyway, but we do have a decent sized crowd, although it's distributed across all of the platforms at the moment. You know, there's going to be some cool stuff coming up, so you know, I'd be on the lookout for an announcement in the Pepe Ordinals Maxi server pretty soon, regarding even some analysis and some stuff that I'll be doing over there with them. Also, they have other announcements that they're making, not just that. Of course, keep an eye on New Bitcoin Order. Got Sigma Crowd, always, they're doing some cool stuff over there. I really like what they're doing as well. I don't know if they have anything new coming up, but yeah, maybe I'll get in touch with some of them over there and see if we can't do something over there as well. And then of course, obviously, the new Bitcoin order all the way. Retordinals. Yeah, they're doing some interesting stuff. The floor price like rocketed up on that thing, and it's holding quite well. And they're funny. Memes are funny, so they're gonna do well. Yeah, but that's gonna wrap it up for today. You all have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening. Have a wonderful week going forward. I'll be back at you with a recorded video tomorrow. I will stream it while it's uploading, and then of course, for higher quality, go ahead and watch the uploaded version. If you can, I do suggest for higher quality while we're doing streams that you head on over to YouTube until X stops compressing the crap out of stream video. We'll see if that ever lets up. And yeah, that's gonna pretty much wrap it for me. You all take care. Landy out.
Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
Thank you, over. CBR 3 gang, over,